Welcome everyone. We just had a couple of introductory slides, then we'll make introductions. So just a disclaimer that this presentation was prepared under a cooperative agreement with our TA Center, which is called NPAC, from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA, and all the opinions expressed here don't reflect the official position of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And one note about session security, recently we've had some unfortunate incidents. So in case there are any security issues, we're gonna immediately terminate the session, and you'll get further information about how to get the content. So sorry to have to say that. What I'm gonna kind of provide some opening remarks that will ground our discussion in a moment. But while I'm doing that, we would love for you all to type into the chat your location and your favorite father or father figure from a book, TV show, or movie, and we'll see what we get. I'm excited to see what you all think. So I just wanted to provide some context for our discussion that grounds this work while folks are logging in and answering our chat question here. We know that the involvement of fathers and father figures has increased dramatically over the past several decades, and there has been an evolution from thinking about fathers as distant breadwinners to co-parents whose contributions to child development and overall well-being are invaluable. However, for those of us who've had the chance to work directly with infants, toddlers, and young children, it is still the case that agencies that serve children and families are not as welcoming of male caregivers. For example, some years ago, I worked in a early Head Start setting that had pictures of fathers at the security desk who were not allowed in the center due to conflicts with moms or other family members. It was absolutely heartbreaking to walk beside toddlers and young children who proudly recognized their fathers in these pictures and shouted with glee, "That's my daddy," but these dads were not allowed in. Today, we want to discuss a different approach for engagement of fathers, grandfathers, and father figures in families, programs, and systems. I'm Pamela Trivedi. I'm one of the leads for the Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Transformation team at our center, and our center supports children, youth, and family mental health. I'm really excited for you to hear the amazing presentation today, especially because as a school and clinical psychologist, I share the lens of many of the practitioners that are logged in today and are seeking more holistic engagement with all important caregivers and families in order to build adult capacity to serve infants, toddlers, and young children. Fathers, grandfathers, and father figures are such an important piece of any kind of comprehensive approach. I want to say just a couple of words about our center. We're the National Training and Technical Assistance Center for Child, Youth, and Family Mental Health. That's a little bit of a mouthful. We're NTAC for short, and we're really a multidisciplinary team. We have some great partners across several organizations. And what we do is we provide innovative, responsive, and multimodal training and technical assistance that support systems level change and the advancement of evidence-based, culturally responsive, and trauma-informed mental health practice. Here are some examples of our key cross-sector audiences, and it seemed like from the registration list from today, we have sort of folks from across these sectors participating today, so we welcome you all. And here's just a little bit more, it's a really nice graphic about our services and trainings, kind of our theoretical model for our approach here. So without further ado, I want to introduce our great speakers today. So I'm really pleased to be introducing Jane Walker, who's a great partner in this work. So Jane is a clinical social worker and a mom of now an adult with behavioral health needs. Jane just is so impressive because she's really leveraged her lived experience and has worked tirelessly to improve the mental health services and supports for children and families, both locally and nationally. She started more than one family advocacy organization with a national reach, and Jane has been the recipient of too many awards to list here in our short webinar today, but she's a wonderful person, and I want to turn it over to Jane right now.
Thank you, Pamela. And Welcome, everybody, and a shout out to all the dads. It is rare that we look out and see so many dads out there. That way to go. So even though we just finished Mother's Day, and shout out to all the mothers as well, we are only 38 days away from Father's Day. So we're turning our attention to dads or fathers or whatever you call them, old man, pop, whatever it might be, a term of endearment in your family for your father, or maybe it wasn't your father, maybe it was a grandfather, an uncle, or some other male role model for you. So as Pamela mentioned, parents and families are facing challenges, but the one thing that hasn't changed, and that is the ever important role of dads. And so we're going to begin today with a very short 1-minute video that is part of a series of videos called, I love it, Dedication. We'll put the website where you can find, it's a whole series of videos. They are put on by the National Responsible Fatherhood Clearinghouse. And this 1-minute video is done by Marvin, who shares his story about parenting his son. I know it will touch your heart as it touched ours. Yeah.
The thing that drives me every day as a dad is him. His real name is Darian, and we call him Day for short. Every day he's hungry for something, whether it's affection, attention, knowledge. And there's this huge responsibility in making sure that when he's no longer under my wing, that he's a good person. I think the advice I would give is you don't need to know all the answers. The craziest thing was believing that your dad knew everything. So as a dad, you felt like you had to know everything. You had to get everything right. It's okay to make mistakes. Just do it from the right place. As long as it's coming from love, then, it kind of starts to work itself out. I want him to be able to sit back one day and go, we worked together, we did a good job. I'll say my kid's pretty dope.
Wow.
What did you think?
That really resonated with me. That's fantastic. The way to start it off. Way to start it off, guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So while positive forms of father involvement are known, there's plenty of research associated with the benefits to our children, socially as well as emotionally, in terms of their academic achievement as well. Historically, our agencies, our human service agencies, have paid far too little attention to fathers. And as Pamela noted, we've sidelined them, victimized them, and sometimes made them out to be less than they should be. Many of our agencies are titled maternal and child health, as though fathers were unimportant. Many funding streams are limited to mothers and children, as though fathers were, again, not important. Eligibility for Medicaid in many states is limited to mothers and children, not available to fathers. So that is why the National Training and Technical Assistance Center for Child, Youth, and Family Mental Health will be focusing on the importance of fathers in early childhood in the coming weeks. And Pamela will be telling you more about that later. But I would now like to introduce our guest speaker for today. And David Armstrong is a colleague and a friend. I came to know David about 4 years ago during a family leadership summit for Project Launch Families that was sponsored by SAMHSA. Since then, David and I have had the privilege of working together on the National Early Childhood Family Network Steering Committee. After David and his wife became full-time guardians of their grandson, who had special health care needs, David turned the challenges of navigating multiple service systems into an opportunity to contribute to state and national policy. From the president of the PTA at his grandson's school to multiple speaking roles at national research conferences, David has served in a range of leadership roles at the local and national level. Over the years, David has worked tirelessly to advocate for better support and services that can more comprehensively meet the needs of children and families. He has been honored with many awards, including the Shining Star for outstanding dedication to Project Launch in New Jersey and Essex Pregnancy and Parenting Connections, the Exemplary Orange Citizen Award for Orange, New Jersey Board of Education, and my favorite, the 2019 Platinum Dads Honoree Award from the Father Center of New Jersey. It doesn't get any better than that. So we have a Platinum Dad honoree that I'm now privileged to turn over to. All yours, Dave.
Thank you, Jane, so much. Such kind words and stuff. I really appreciate that. And I want to just start off by saying thank you, Jane. Thank you, Pamela. And thank you, NTTAC. As a father, let me go back. As a husband, a father, a grandfather, and now a great-grandfather, because later on in the story, I'll tell you about my oldest grandson who has a child now. But I was kind of forced into this journey. Unfortunately, my grandson's mother, my daughter, passed away when he was 10 years old. And he started acting up in school, misbehaving and stuff. I guess he didn't know how to explain his feelings or get his feelings out. And I was at the school 3 or 4 times a week. And the school wasn't really giving me any options. They wasn't giving me any, I wouldn't say any. They gave me some service and support, but it wasn't enough for him to reach his fullest potential. So what I had to do was learn how to navigate the children's system of care. And with that being said, going through the children's system of care, trying to navigate it as a male caregiver was difficult. It was difficult from the beginning because it's a comprehensive systems that were in place. And I believe most of the mental health, child mental health, social service systems were not really engaging dads at that time. They were looking for his mom, his grandmother, or his aunt and stuff. So I had to gain the trust of them to let them know that I was sincere about finding services and support for my grandson. And I had to unfortunately find out that we all have implicit bias, unfortunately. 95%, I'm gonna say 95% of the children's system services are by women. They are providing services are women. So I had to get past the implicit bias of women thinking that men were only the supporters or protectors and stuff and not nurturers. So, I had to climb that ladder. But it's been definitely a journey that I have passion for. I want to give a shameless shout out to my New Jersey team who have had patience with me and have given me many opportunities and platforms to bring my perspective as a male and as a grandfather to the forefront, and to talk to service providers and talk to different entities about how do they not intentionally or authentically engage dads in this space. So basically that's my story. And as you can see the picture of my grandson when he was younger on the left, myself and my younger grandson. And actually the picture in the middle is when my wife and I were going to the Platinum Dad ceremony. And this is my grandson who is actually now 19 years old. And you can see he's holding up basketball trophies. That was one of his passions. That was one of the things that helped him regulate himself throughout his challenges and stuff. But I also found out that by sitting on a couple of early childhood development committees, that even though he was diagnosed with special needs, healthcare needs, like 8-10 years ago, it really started when he was in my daughter's womb. Social and emotional development actually start prenatal. And with my daughter being young and my son-in-law being young, they used to argue a lot, or they used to show a lot of emotions when my daughter was stressed. And I was wondering why my grandson was so aggressive at times. And he actually got it naturally. So my journey has been to speak to different fathers to let them know how impactful they are when the development of their children at an early age, not just when they're born, but when they're prenatal. Fathers bring to the table just as much as mothers do. And a combination of both is fantastic. I mean, it gives greater academic success to your child, more positive social behavior, fewer contact problems, better self-esteem, lower level of depression, and reduced contact with juvenile justice system. And although we're doing better, like I said earlier, most early childhood mental health social service systems do not intentionally or authentically engage fathers or male role models in a historic, unsupportive system and environments. The rules were made for fathers. I mean, I don't know about the maternal leave, and if that's one of the issues, that fathers don't have, get maternal leave when a child is born. I know PTSD is an issue with fathers with the birth of their child. If it's a difficult birth with the mothers, we're not getting that health services. And it's the disparity in healthcare, especially when it comes to fathers, So basically that's my story as far as trying to navigate, and I'm still navigating the system of care. I found out that most social service agencies work in silos. They don't necessarily give you a warm handoff if you need other services. And especially, and it's only my personal belief that it was numbers. They were only concerned with how many people they served and wasn't really concerned about the outcome of if those services actually help the family or help the parents or help the fathers.
Could you just talk about what it felt like walking into a human service agency as a grandfather with a young child?
Well, I would say it was difficult because at first I was basically traumatized because I couldn't help my grandson. I couldn't help him digressing into behavioral challenges and things like that. So I was looking for the professionals, but I found out by going to the social service, most of them are not father friendly. A lot of them don't show pictures of dads and their babies. A lot of them don't have male as employees at the locations. So it was kind of difficult because, like I said, it was that implicit bias when it comes to men, and the implicit bias, how you service or you act around certain groups, and especially men. I mean, we're a female dominant systems that really, I shouldn't say don't believe that men could be nurturers, but we only providers and supporters, protectors. And bringing that nurtured part, a lot of people were surprised what I brought to the table as far as my passion and the nurturing aspect of my journey with my child, and to advocate for not only my child, but for all children in the system.
So you were not the father, you were the grandfather. How did that even add another layer or dimension, if you will?
I mean, being a grandfather and being the legal guardian of my grandson, it brought a different layer because our concept of how to raise a child was different than, say, the other generation. And I had to take on something that I really didn't go through except with my daughters. And it was like 10 or 15 years after, my daughters were grown that I was now, going to this child raising adventure, I'm gonna have to say again. And it was difficult. I mean, I spoke to some people that when I sat down for his IEP meeting, his individual educational plan, and I told them about my grandson, and they said, wow, you know a lot about your grandson. And I was like, don't I supposed to? I'm his legal parent. I mean, I supposed to know. I knew my grandson, and he found out that I knew my grandson better than he knew himself. So, being a grandfather, it brought extra work as far as navigating the system because of me, one, being a male and then being a grandfather. But like I said earlier, my New Jersey team gave me many platforms and many opportunities to express my opinion to service providers and different people that engage families. And I use one, for example, things are changing and getting a little better. Home care, home visit, I apologize, home visit. Home visit started so the child could do better. But then somebody came up with a bright idea and said, you know what? For the child to do better, the parent has to do better. But that parent was always the mother. We're getting better. Even if the father was in the household or out of the household, he wasn't really ever invited to the table. And I could be wrong, but the last thing I think I realized that father's been part of the family structure for a very long time, and not to be included in the development socially and emotionally of their child while growing up, I think is incredible in this day and age.
Yeah. Let's hear in the chat box from some of the others that are on this about your experiences into a provider, human service provider, and what that felt like. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Jen, can you repeat that question?
From other fathers on the webinar in the chat box,
Yes.
what their experiences have been, if they've been similar to David's, where they didn't feel welcome, or maybe they did feel welcome. If so, how? Let's see what we've got here.
I don't know if you could see David, but there's so many encouraging words and appreciation for your story that folks have chatted in. So it's really lovely to see that.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And like I said, it's about changing the mindset. I mean, I appreciate all the women that is doing the work. I mean, because somebody has to do it. I have no bias against women whatsoever. I have had many beautiful mentors that are female that have poured into me to be able to speak to the audience the way I'm speaking to as far as advocating for fathers' rights. So, I mean, it's time for dads to step up. Sometimes you can't wait to be invited to the table. Sometimes you have to invite yourself to the table. I mean, a lot of times, I mean, it's very difficult with us men. I mean, we don't talk a lot. We don't show emotion a lot. We, unfortunately, a lot of us self-medicate or show aggression when things are not going our way. So I can understand why it's sometimes difficult to approach men, but also mothers and partners have to be able to realize that they are the throughway to the fathers being able to get more involved with the upbringing of their children. The relationship that you have with your partner is very important because it's no longer about you and the partner, it's about the child, the well-being of the child and stuff. And you need to show a great relationship to make sure the child reaches their fullest potential.
I think these are it's really amazing words. And thanks so much, Jane, for highlighting these really important parts of David's story and his experience. I love the way David sort of took advantage and leveraged every platform he could in really just advancing this work on supporting children and families with behavioral health issues. Just in the interest of time, I would love to be able to engage with David this whole afternoon, but just in the interest of time, I'm gonna move on here and wrap up. So next slide, please, Joanne. We just pulled these out. We'll send you the slides so you can look at them. I don't want to read all of them, but thinking about David's story and the wonderful content that Jane shared, we just kind of pulled out some things we think are important for thinking about the engagement of fathers and father figures in early childhood systems of care. And as David mentioned, this is one of the later points on this list, but it's really important for us all to learn from great work going on in analogous sectors. David noted some of the excellent work going on to engage dads in home visiting. I think in some of these more recent kind of programs or models, such as Early Head Start and home visiting, where engaging fathers and father figures is almost baked into the model. Since they're newer models, we've really seen some promising work in those fields that, sort of it's incumbent upon us in early childhood mental health to learn from those models. And just kind of, I noticed that some folks in the chat were highlighting their really important intersectional identities. So as families are changing, folks and their identities are changing. We have, we have to consider folks who identify as male, but were not really born as male, and kind of parenting just from a multi-generational perspective. I think now in the pandemic, we have a real appreciation for grandparents and kinship caregivers who have helped sustain working families with young children during this time. So just a number of considerations, and you all participants probably have a lot more of these sort of considerations that we should be mindful of. Next slide, please, Joanne. I think if there's any other sort of, I think we don't have time to kind of for folks to raise their hand, but if anyone kind of just wants to speak up, if they have any questions for David or Jane, we would love to just take one or two questions, and then we'll go over ways that we're going to be continuing this work in the early childhood team.
Pamela, I think one question that came in that is very true and kind of a long-term issue is the lack of fathers in human services, and particularly in early childhood, and how that can be changed so that more fathers and male role models are enticed to enter the early childhood field. We've seen more and more in education, in elementary education, that more males are coming in, more males are coming into the nursing field as well. So I think making the case for the need for that as well in early childhood is an important one.
I think that's totally right. I know a lot of folks have been asking, Joanne, is it okay to advance to the next slide? And I know I just saw Renee asking about resources. We are actually going to be posting a number of the resources of sort of the promising approaches and practices from analogous sectors, like I just mentioned. So we're going to be posting some resources to our website. So we'll share that information with folks as soon as we have those resource lists ready. I just wanted to let folks know, well, first of all, it's the second item on this list. We actually have a chance to do a deeper dive. We have in engaging fathers and father figures. We have a great community of practice that kicks off next week that we have wonderful folks with lived experience coming to help us think through this, and also sort of different frameworks that have emerged from the applied behavioral health research. So there's still room in our community of practice. We'd love for people to join. I think Carrie from NTAC is going to be chatting those links into and we'll also when we do the follow-up note, we'll provide those to you. Kind of this is related to Children's Mental Health Awareness Month. Tomorrow is the second of our 3-part series on sort of reconnecting, reflecting, and renewing around children's mental health, as kind of families and children, our youth have been coping with the pandemic sort of with an eye toward building resilience and an eye towards the future. I'm going to be joining a panel with 2 really excellent practitioners who serve young children, their families, and additional early childhood and education staff who serve young children and families. So that will be a great conversation tomorrow. And then looking ahead on the early childhood team, we have some more focused work coming up on trauma-informed approaches that is kicking off with a webinar where a state administrator will be talking about systems level approaches, and then that will also be followed by opportunities for deeper learning. This was, this was a really amazing opportunity to engage with David. We'll send along some follow-up resources. And Joanne, would you mind advancing the slide?
So Pamela, maybe we could go back one
Oh, sure.
to just let people know the community of practice starts next week, May 20th, 27th, June 3rd, and June 10th. So it's 4 additional weeks. And it starts at 2 p.m. Eastern time to 2:45 Eastern time. You can see the other times there. It does require registration, and there will be, as Pamela mentioned, speakers from different organizations that provide fatherhood programs, as well as some people have done research in the area. So it's much deeper dive than today, and David was the perfect kickoff. So Carrie put the registration in the
Perfect.
chat box.
And then, right, we would love to hear from you. We are, we're constantly sort of looking for feedback as we think about the best way to engage with folks and deliver this content in these really important topics. We on the early childhood team have been trying these short, more coffee talk type of engagements, but we're open to your feedback on what the best way to get this content and have the opportunity to engage with great folks like David is. So we would love your feedback on that and kind of content and anything else you'd be looking for to support your work in building infant and early childhood systems of care. I think we're a little bit over time and we want to be respectful. We're promising to be concise here. So I just want to so much gratitude to David and Jane for helping us understand the important roles of fathers, grandfathers, and father figures in families, programs, and systems. This was just a small slice, and we hope to see you at some of our other events where we're going to engage more deeply in this topic. Thank you so much.
Have a good day, everybody.